This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Here now, Tony Bruschi.
What the preoccupation with guns and weapons that Diddy seemed to have? He was always, according to many witnesses, not necessarily in the music videos, but in his home, pulling out big guns quite a bit. And we've learned, no, not all of them were registered, not all of them were legal, but he had quite a few. I mean, I get, he's someone who had personal security. It wasn't like he was sitting there by himself and should Suge Knight come knocking on the door, or the ghost of Tupac, he's not going to have to sit there and pull out the AR to defend himself. He's got people for that. But there seems to be almost like a security blanket that he looked at these weapons as having, the way he would display them and brag about them to his friends and even his enemies. What does that say? Does that show like a huge level of insecurity that I have to go look at all these big weapons ultimately at the end of the day? I mean, what does that say about someone who's really into that? I'm not talking about hunters. I'm just talking about somebody who's, has a small army arsenal in their coat closet.
Yeah, a couple things could be somebody who's got paranoia. I don't know that was true in his case. It could also be this almost like getting high over the sense of domination and power. And I think firearms, when somebody is, collecting this many big guns and they clearly don't have a security need for guns, it's a sense of, look what I can do and look how powerful I am. And he may have had fantasies about what he would like to do with all those guns, which puts him again in the category of a very disturbed person.
Like, it's there. What else would have happened? I mean, it makes me want. I mean, had him not be going down for this, I wonder what would have brought him down. I mean, obviously he hasn't been found guilty yet, but I think we know where this is going. I mean, if it wasn't this, would it be something, you think? Something maybe even worse? I mean, this is pretty bad. But so I hesitate to say maybe even worse. But I mean, maybe like people dying. I mean, and there are rumors that is a possibility.
I think so. I think eventually something horrendous would have happened, even worse than what we've heard about thus far. But it really shocks me that he got away with all this for as many years as he did. That's just crazy.
His family, his kids, his sons, his daughters, a lot of them have been in court, and some out of court on certain days. His mother's been there. How the hell are they processing something like this? I mean, do they just believe he didn't do any of these things, even though it's on video of him horribly abusing Cassie? We know that much. With all the other allegations, are these folks who are just going to put the rest aside and go, none of it else can be true? We know that happened, but nothing else can be true about this, as they sit behind him, this monster that's having all these people finally let their floodgates open and share the horrors of what life was like with this man, and still sit there and I guess support him. That always to me is very shocking, especially when it gets this raw and this real, where there really is no question about the behavior. We know who he is. We know what he did. Why on earth would you still be there behind them? I don't care if you're mom. I don't care if you're son. I don't care if you're daughter, whatever. Why are you there?
Yeah, it doesn't speak well of the family culture that this kind of behavior could be. Even if a tenth of it is true, you would think the family would be having serious concerns at this point. And the fact that they can remain supportive and, as you say, just sit there and witness this stuff and it doesn't waver, makes me wonder how many qualities of his that they share. This disregard for other people. It just doesn't smack of a normal human reaction.
If you were to give advice to his sons, who there's other charges that are out there on them, or accusations against them of engaging in very similar type acts that he did, before they continue to ruin their lives further, or have their lives ruined, I maybe should say, because like if you were brought up in this and this is all you know, I do have some sympathy for you. You're an adult now. You should know what's right and wrong. So that's on you. But, you can't change necessarily who you were brought up around and what was normalized. What would you say to them to maybe try and have some semblance of a normal life or a healthy life now that daddy's going to be behind bars for the rest of his life?
Yeah, I would probably go in two areas. One would be, is it possible to elicit empathy for other people from them, to try to have them, put yourself in the shoes of some of these people who have been victimized by your father? And do they even have the capacity to do that? If they have the capacity to do that, that would be a good sign. If they didn't and said, these other people deserved it, or it doesn't really matter,
Yeah.
then I would have to, fall back on the second one. Do you want to spend your life in prison?
Yeah.
Because it's going to work better for you if you can learn to at least play normal in the world and treat other people decently.
Yeah. And that's the scary part about all this. Like, what are they going to do? What if this was like, it just seems like this is one of those nightmares waiting to happen. You can't just like lock somebody up and put them in a padded room because they've been raised by the devil incarnate.
Right.
So they're going to go out there, they're going to do their own things in life. If they're incapable of having that empathy because it's just kind of part of who they are, it's part of how they were brought up. Is there any? I mean, can they learn empathy? Can that be something that they tap into? Maybe it's just like really on low volume in their lives or in their minds, but they need to take a stronger listen to that and try to learn how to turn the volume up on that.
That's sure a wonderful goal. How often it's successful, there's a movement in people who work in the prison system. They go in as volunteers called restorative justice. And that's the goal, is to try to help people who are incarcerated have some kind of personal growth and develop a sense of empathy for the people that they hurt and for other people. I don't have data on how successful that is. And it may be hard to measure because when they're in prison, you don't know what they're going to do until they get out of prison. But we certainly know that for people who are hardcore psychopaths, they have a very high recidivism rate. When they get out of prison, they just go back and commit more violent crimes. So it's a wonderful goal. How successful we can be is yet to be determined.
I have a great idea for them, and it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but I could see it actually happening. Mega church preachers. There's nothing that could possibly go wrong with that. Nothing that could possibly go wrong with Diddy's kids turning into mega church preachers.
They would probably make more money than Diddy has made. Yes.
They would do it good. They would,
Yeah,
but at the end of the
would do
day,
it
it's
good.
like the Righteous Gemstones or worse.
Craving non-stop true crime updates? Press subscribe now and get the latest cases, analysis, and expert commentary delivered straight to your feed. Only from the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today.